Hey guys, this is Sweet, and today I'm going to be giving you a Frost Mage 9.1 PvP guide. In this guide, I'm going to run you through talents, conduits, rotation, talents, all the stuff that you need to know to play Frost Mage in 9.1. So starting off first, guys, we're going to be talking about covenants. So there are two main covenants that you can go for Frost Mage. The optimal one is going to be Venthyr. However, if you're like me and you're going to be playing a lot of fire and a lot of frost, I recommend that you probably stay in Night Fae. Night Fae works really well with every mage spec. Shifting power is really good for reducing not only cooldowns, but also reducing silences. So like if you get kicked on frost and then you use shifting power, it will reduce the silence cooldown, which is always nice, as well as having our shoal shape, which increases our movement speed and gives us the blink. So it's really good for resetting, and it's really good for getting away, and it has some nice interactions with conduits if you have them and if you choose to use them. With Frost Mage in the Night Phase spec, we are going to be going with Naya, the Naya tree. We're going to go down into Ice Bite. So if you have Ice Bite, it is really good for increasing the damage of Ice Lance against frozen enemies. You'll then take Run without tiring, because that is your only choice. Once we get down to our finesse conduit, we are going to go with a blink reduction. To be honest, our finesse conduits and our endurance conduits are fairly average, so as long as you have diverted energy in, you can really play with whatever you want as the other endurance conduits or finesse conduits. This doesn't really matter. So we are going to make sure that we're coming down and putting our diverted energy in, which gives your barrier heal, your barriers heal you for 35% of the damage absorbed. This is massive. You think about how many barriers you have, and how long you have the uptime for. Really good, in terms of endurance conduits. Apart from that, the others are okay. There are some other options that you go with. Cryo Freeze is something that I'll use when I'm playing in twos and I don't have a healer. While inside Ice Block, you heal for 77% of your maximum health over the duration. If you're versing a warrior or a priest, the value of this Cryo Freeze drops off a ton. And then moving down into our the last potency conduit that we have unlocked right now. Keep in mind, this is the first week of 9.1, so we don't have our next tree unlocked yet. So I've gone with Unrelenting Cold. Frozen orbs damage is increased by 21%. This is really good for a little bit of burst damage, but where this excels the most is in RBGs. If you are a Frost Mage playing in RBGs, by Frost Orbing and then using Blizzard to reduce your Frost Orb cooldown, you'll get so much value out of this conduit. So it's pretty much something that you should be taking for every single RBG if you're an RBG player. Now, going into our talents. So because there was the change to Frostbolt, basically the damage of Frostbolt was buffed by, I think, either 75 or 85%. I can't remember the exact figure. The value of Lonely Winter has gone up a lot. So previously, if you were playing Frost Mage, you would always play with Ice Nova. Gives you a nice little freeze and a little bit of damage. You can still play that. Where you would play Lonely Winter is you would play it in a comp where you have a lot of consistent damage, like you're playing with a Shadow Priest or a Destro Warlock. Where you'll want to use Ice Nova is where you need a little bit more control. So comps like RMP, you might see a little bit more value. But to be honest, I see Lonely Winter being the standout in any comp right now, because of just the sheer amount of damage it gives. Like, it is a big, really big buff. And I just realized that I'm doing this tutorial without war mode on, so that was a bit of a blunder. Anyway, coming down into our second row, we're always going to be taking Shimmer. There are times where you can drop Shimmer, for example, if you need to get out of a lot of rogue stuns. But generally, you need this to land your pulleys, so you will be going with Shimmer most of the time. Into our next row, Incantus Flow is going to be my choice. You could play Rune of Power if you like. Casting Icy Veins will also create a Rune of Power at your location. This doesn't have as much value as it does when we play fire. The reason it's so good when we play fire is because you have so many talents that reduce the cooldown of combustion to drop that rune of power, but you don't really have that when you play frost. So Enchanter's Flow for me is a little bit better. Now, coming into our fourth row, you can really play whatever you like in this row. I have gone with Frozen Touch. Frostbolt grants your Fingers of Frost and Brain Freeze 20% more often. Because we are playing Deep Shatter, Lonely Winter, Frostbite, it just makes sense to go with Frozen Touch. Now you can play E1 Bolt, which will give you a stack of Brain Freeze, and you could play Chain Reaction. But for me, I think Frozen Touch in this specific build has the most value out of all of them. Coming into our fifth row, Frigid Winds is pretty much going to be the pick. Ice Ward doesn't hold much value unless you are versing a melee team that is going to be on your ass the entire time. And Bring It Frost is just simply far too hard to land when you don't have Dragon's Breath. So Frigid Winds is the standout choice. In the fifth row, we're going to be taking Comet Storm. So Comet Storm has a lot of damage. It is a secondary burst cooldown. It's pretty much something that you want to use in all of your bursts. The things that you need to keep in mind is that it does some AoE damage, and that it will break CC unless the CC doesn't break on damage like Cyclone. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Resto Druids are our primary best healer because Cyclone doesn't break with all of our AoE damage. We have Orb, we have Comet Storm. If you play Ice Nova breaks it. We have Frost Nova. Like, there's just so many things that can break CC, which is why Resto Druid has such high value. And in our final tree, you could either go Thermal Void or Ray of Frost. I have gone with Thermal Void. I always drop this against teams that have a Purge, and I'll play Ray of Frost, but if the other team doesn't have a Purge, then there is a lot of value in Thermal Void. Ray of Frost is very strong, but for me, Thermal Void comes out just a little bit ahead. Coming into talents, first up, something that this is kind of just a filler, but it's nice to have. Gives you a chill effects, a 15% chance to freeze the target for 4 seconds. This is good when you just need to land some quick shatters. Keeping in mind that when we play Lonely Winter, we don't have a pet, so we kind of have to rely on procs for our shatters. It's not the most reliable spec, but when you can pull it off, it is unbelievable. Deep Shatter, your Frostbolt deals 75% additional damage to frozen targets. Pretty much this is always going to be 100% lock-in. You always play this talent. There's never any time you won't be using it. And Concentrated Coolness. Frozen Orb's damage is increased by 10% and is now castable at a location with a 40-yard range, but no longer moves. This is perfect because you can, one, aim where it goes. You can set it up so that it's not going to break CC. You can use it as a peel. There's plenty of things that you can do with it. Talking about some of our other talents, Ice Form looks really nice, but there is rarely any situation where it is going to be better than actual Icy Veins, because Haste helps us with everything else. Yeah, it helps us with our polymorphs. It helps us do more Frostbolts to get more Icicles. Haste pretty much has more value than the damage increase. Netherwind Armor is really good to take as a defensive talent. So if you're versing like a really Mongo comp like TSG or something, Netherwind Armor has great value. Prismatic Cloak is something you will take if you need if you have a very high damage magical team on the other side, like a Frost Mage and a Warlock, you might take this to save yourself. But to be honest, you should just be using pillars rather than using your blinks or your shimmer to reduce your damage. And talking about our new talent, Ice Wall, conjures an ice wall 30 yards long that obstructs line of sight. The wall has 40% of your maximum health and lasts up to 15 seconds. Depending on the arena, this could be used very, very cleverly. For example, if the enemy team is CC'd on the inside of the pillars in the ground, you could use that to block off so they have to go all the way around. it's another way to create a CC. The only issue is that it does have a cast time. It's 1.3 seconds. So, you know, if it was instant, for me, this would be 100% lock-in. And I've also noticed that it's a little bit buggy when you try to place it down. So it's really up to you. Ice Wall has a lot of value in RBGs, but in Arena, I don't think it is going to get as much playtime as Blizzard intended on them. Talking about stats, so our main stats are going to be haste versatility. So just getting as much haste as you can while getting verse. So anything that has haste verse on it is going to be perfect for you. That is just what you're going to aim for the entire expansion. In terms of trinkets, you'll be running 2 of the Gladiators trinkets. We'll be running the Alacrity trinket because it has haste on it. We don't really need badge like we would as a fire mage because we have more consistent damage. There's not really a burst that's going to be insanely big like combustion. We have a lot of consistent damage, and Alacrity has a higher proc per minute, which makes it very nice for Frost. So let's talk about rotation. Keeping in mind that I don't have war mode on, which is pretty important. Basically what we're going to be doing is building up icicles. You can see this weak aura here. What icicles do is they build up. You can see them above my head. The icicles will build up. And then when you ice lance, it will also shoot those icicles to buff your damage. So you can build icicles from either Frostbolt or from Flurry. And these procs that you see on the side, so if this is a Flurry proc, you'll generally use your Flurry Frostbolt into Flurry. And then if you had icicles, you would ice lance after. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, how am I going to get my procs if I don't have a water elemental? So after you Flurry, looking at this debuff here, we have Winter's Chill, taking damage from the mage as if the spells were frozen. So after you get your instant cast Flurry off, you can get 2 free crits, okay, which lowers the need for us to actually have the freeze from the elemental. Now you do lose a bit of control, but again, there has to be a trade-off, otherwise it'd just be too easy. Now talking about burst, you want to try and get something as a frost procs up, get your Flurry up. We're then going to drop Orb, Icy Veins, Flurry, and then we're going to spam and get rid of our procs. And that's pretty much our burst. Now, you'll also add Comet Storm in if the person is stationary. So if they're in a stun or they're in a Nova and you know that they're not going to get away, then Comet Storm is good to use. Otherwise, if they're moving, it's just not going to hit them. It's not going to do any damage. So generally, you're going to work off your procs. You'll always be spamming Frostbolt to get as many icicles as you can with Flurry. And then just basically use your procs as they come in. As you can see, quite a lot of damage. So I am doing 4.4k DPS right now, and war mode is turned off. So the changes that were made to Frostbolt are only effective in PvP. So this would be a lot higher if I had war mode on. Talking about compositions, some of our best compositions this season are going to be Destro Lock, Frost Mage, and Resto Druid. I think that's going to be our tier 1 comp. There is just so much consistent damage with that comp. It is unbelievable. Then I think Frost Mage, Shadow Priest, Resto Druid will be super strong as well as Rogue, Mage, Druid, RMD. So I think those are going to be our 3 standout comps. You pretty much have to play with the Druid because your spells are just going to be breaking the CC. Of course, you can control it so that you're not doing any AoE, so you could just use Frostbolt, Flurry, and Ice Lance. But if you want to get the most out of the Mage Burst, then you will need to use some stuff that breaks AoE, like Comet Storm and Frost Orb. So guys, I hope that helps. I just want to make a super short one-take tutorial where I go through the basics of Frost Mage PvP. There are no guides that are up to date for 9.1 on YouTube. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. I'm happy to help. And for those of you wondering what my Shadow Priest guide is, my Shadow Priest guide will be coming in the next couple of weeks. Honestly, I'm just having so much fun on Mage right now. I just haven't even logged on the Shadow Priest. So have a good one, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Cheers.